This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community. Episode 53. I'm Harold Ree.
And I'm Nancy Ree. Today's guest is Sue Weeding.
We firmly believe that if you rescue that animal, you undertake to do everything physically in your power to do the best for it, and you give that animal the best quality of life you can.
16 years ago, Sue and her husband, Rod Weeding, moved from Norwich, England to the south of Spain to enjoy their retirement. 6 months into their new Spanish life, they rescued 2 horses, and over the past 16 years, they have saved over 100 animals, mainly horses, ponies, and donkeys. Sue and Rod are the founders of Easy Horse Care Rescue Center in Alicante, Spain.
Because of all the different animals that Sue and Rod have rescued over the years, you might want to go to our show notes to keep track of all the different animals that Sue talks about.
If you want to learn more about Sue Weeding and Easy Horse Care Rescue Center, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/53. That's the number 53.
My name is Susan Weeding. We live in Spain, Alicante, Spain, which is on the Costa Blanca. We left the UK 16 years ago. We actually retired. We bought what is known in Spain as a finca, which basically is a rustic farmhouse on a plot of land. In the UK, I did have horses. I had 2 or 3 of my own, and we also used to do horse livery. But we decided that when we moved to Spain, no more horses, let's have a new life and do other things and travel a little bit. Well, I think after about 6 months of moving here to Spain, I actually rescued 2 horses that had been abandoned on a plot of land that another English couple had bought, and they'd advertised for help because they didn't know what to do with them. So that kind of changed our plans a little bit, because within 6 months of freedom, suddenly we had 2 horses. That then gave me a second challenge. Okay, I've got 2 horses. Right, well, I haven't got any saddles or bridles or whatever to do anything with them. I will have to find some. 15, 16 years ago, it was impossible to find traditional English riding equipment in Spain. So I actually sent off to the UK and bought them from a friend of mine who had an English tack shop, equestrian shop. Everything came over, and yes, fine. So I had the 2 horses. Linda and Luna, they were called. I then decided, with the help of my friend in England who had the equestrian shop, that I would open up an equestrian shop here in Spain at my home, which I did. The shop proved to be very, very successful, and it actually brought a wide circle of horse people from a huge area around Spain. And I very quickly started to hear stories of horses, donkeys, ponies being abandoned, ill-treated, the lack of general knowledge of horse care in a huge area of where I live. And I was becoming increasingly alarmed, more and more agitated, because in those days there really wasn't any animal welfare at all in Spain. And even now, we are really at the very beginning of animal welfare. And even people that had tried to maybe get the police involved or the authorities involved when they saw a case of horse abuse or any animal abuse, basically nobody was interested. The police didn't want to know, the councils didn't want to know. So it was just a grey area where, in the end, people just looked the other way because they didn't know what to do about it, and there was nobody there. There were no rescue centres, there was nothing. And really, this is what prompted me and my husband Rod to actually open up the Easy Horse Care Rescue Centre. And we named it after our tack shop, which was called Easy Horse Care Tack Shop. Every animal tells you a story. I suppose my very first horse taught me everything. I mean, I wasn't a wealthy person. I didn't have a privileged childhood. I lived in I had a very normal childhood. I was brought up in my granny's pub. I used to sit and draw horses in the bar from the racing calendar. And for some reason, I always had an attraction to horses. And I actually bought my first horse when I was 36, when I actually had a successful business and I had enough money and enough staff to actually buy the horse and learn how to care for it. And I think that was probably one of the biggest wonders of my life. He was called Diplomat. And in actual fact, he was an American horse. He was an American standard bred, and he was a trotting horse. And trotting is an American sport. He was a big personality. He'd had a bad accident on the track, lost the confidence to do it, and they sold him to me as, shall we say, a novice's ride. Well, the pair of us, I was a complete and utter novice, and this horse certainly wasn't a novice ride because he'd never really had anybody on his back. He'd only used to been trotting with a cart. Me and this horse really taught ourselves so much together. We learnt together, and we just had the most wonderful, wonderful times. They teach you to be strong. They teach you to be determined. They teach you to, when you fall off, you get up and you get back in the saddle.
How many years were you able to spend with Diplomat?
I had Diplomat from when I was 36 to when I moved to Spain 16 years ago. And I actually gave him to a very, very nice lady who loved him to bits. He's obviously passed on now, but I ensured that he was cared for the rest of his life. As you know, England, you've got grass, you've got greenery. And where we are on the Costa Blanca, it's very hot, very dry. There's no grazing, no grass, and it's a very, very different lifestyle. So we done the right thing. But yeah, that horse really, really taught me a lot. And yet, without a doubt, he has made me the person that I am today. Without a doubt, because of him, we now have 97 horses, ponies and donkeys.
Yes, that's right. You actually wrote a book about one of your other horses. You want to maybe talk a little bit about the story of Faith and Cookie?
Cookie came before Faith. In the early days, when we first started the rescue centre, there were horses and ponies everywhere, kept in the most horrendous places. We rescued 3 little ponies, Cookie, Magic, another little one called Angel. Very sadly, Angel was put to sleep very quickly after we rescued her. These were 3 little miniature ponies. A butcher, a local butcher who also had goats and sheep, had bought them for meat. Now, these little ponies had been fed very badly on bread and grain. Without getting too technical, they caused a condition called laminitis, and it got so far advanced that they were actually unable to walk. They were crippled, and they just laid there, and they were just kept in the most appalling conditions. The last surviving one was Cookie, and actually Cookie went off to Barcelona to have surgery to try to get some fresh blood because the veins had actually closed up down into her hoof, and this is all part of the problem with laminitis. Surgery was successful, and Cookie came back to us with renewed life. She was able to walk again. She had quality of life. Obviously, she couldn't run around with the other little minis, but, you know, she was very happy. She used to hang about with Isadora the pig. Then, of course, we rescued Faith. Now, Faith was another little miniature pony. All of her life, she'd been tied up to a tree. One day, for whatever reason, the rope had got wrapped around her leg, and because she was kept on her own, nobody had noticed it. She'd obviously struggled, and the ropes had got cut tighter, and they'd cut off the blood supply into the leg. When eventually a lady found her and called us out, the situation had got where the flesh simply had died.
Oh, boy.
And the whole thing, all of the flesh had simply fell away from the front of the leg, exposing everything, the bones, everything was the whole. It was like a skeletal construction of a horse.
Right.
You could see all the bones, you could see the tendons, you could see everything. Yeah. Now, obviously, it was horrific. We obviously called our vet Dorothea out, and a long process actually started of saving Faith, because we knew the biggest problem obviously was going to be bone disease, because the whole bone had been exposed to the air. We obviously started on various courses of antibiotics, but she developed a reaction to them and was rushed to hospital. In the end, we got it down to one antibiotic that we could give her that had to come to us twice a week in a refrigerated unit. It was very, very expensive, but it was the one antibiotic that was working, and she had to have a fresh plaster cast put on every day. This was done at night. The old one cut off, all the antibiotics actually injected literally into the wound, and then another plaster cast put on again the same night, and then we'd have to dry it with a hairdryer. We then actually done DIY stem cell, where the vet would come twice a week, extract some blood. She'd actually extract the healing cells using a centrifugal machine from the blood, and also administer that twice a week. All of this was working. During the day, Faith would hobble around the yard with her plaster cast on. Her and Cookie became firm friends. They done everything together. This is where their deep friendship came from. Very sadly, towards the end of the treatment, when we nearly got to the stage where everything was healing up, we suddenly found that it had stopped healing and it just couldn't go any further. And this was when we realised our worst fears had come true. Faith had actually had to have bone disease, and it actually got in from below the bone.
How many weeks or months had you had Faith?
9 months. We'd done this treatment for 9 months every day. Whether it was Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, it didn't matter.
How long does that take to put on a plaster cast on a horse?
It used to take us, I would say, between an hour and a half, depending on if we were doing stem cell treatment or not. And bearing in mind, in those days, we didn't really have any proper facilities outside, so we had to use lamp lights and all sorts of things so we could see to do it at night. Our vet, Dorothea, was doing it as cheaply as possible for us, so she would come at night when she'd finished all her other work. So, of course, there we were every evening. She could come sometimes at 6, sometimes at 7, sometimes maybe even 10 o'clock at night. And all three of us, me, my husband and myself, would be there with Faith doing this, and this little horse would be there with a leg up. I'd be holding the leg while we used to get the old plaster cast off, treat it all, and then the final thing was obviously drying it all with a hairdryer. Because also Dorothea would use the traditional plaster cast, the traditional plaster, because that actually also has healing properties.
If I break my leg, I know who to go to now, because I'm sure you'll do a very thorough job. So now that you discovered it was almost, irreversible, really.
Our worst fears had come true, and the bone was actually dying. There was Dorothea, me and Rod, and Dorothea was saying, well, that's it, guys. She's definitely got bone disease. There's nothing we can do. We have two choices. She said, we put her to sleep or we amputate. And we said, well, okay, Dorothea, what if we amputate? She said, yeah, well, we can do that. She said, but nobody's ever done it in Spain. She said, I don't know where we'd go to get prosthetic legs. I really don't know the best way forward at all. And do you know, I remembered then, there's a little pony called Molly the pony. Now, Molly was a victim of Hurricane Katrina, and against all the odds, Molly survived, only to be savaged by a pit bull. Now, Molly's owner, very, very tenacious lady, a bit like me and Rod, decided to save Molly, and Molly actually had an amputation in Louisiana by a surgeon called Rustin Moore. Now, all of this was put on an email, and the email went viral. I was actually sent this picture of Molly, and it was headed, "You've got to meet Molly." And then there was the picture of the horse with the prostheses, then the story of Molly. Now, I'd read this about a good year and a half prior to Faith. It always stuck in my mind, but like so many things happened since then, and suddenly it came back to my memory. Hang on a minute, there's a horse in America called Molly. She had an artificial leg. He managed to track the original email, and he actually got in touch with Molly's owner, Kay Harris. And Kay got back, and she said she'd help us. And she got in touch with Rustin Moore. Rustin Moore got in touch with us. Well, then we got in touch with our surgeon, Gasper, who'd helped Cookie. And it actually transpired that Rustin Moore and Gasper had worked together in America many years prior.
No kidding.
And they were actually buddies. Yeah. And now, this is why I believe in fate. It's incredible, but it's true. These guys actually knew each other, and really, that was it. We were on. Rustin got in touch with Gasper. They discussed Faith's case. That was it. Rod then took Faith up to Barcelona to meet Gasper. Gasper obviously had to examine her to make sure that the surgery was possible. And then Faith stayed there. Gasper then sent off for the equipment to do the surgery. And he actually had to get it from all over Europe because she's a mini pony. He didn't have any instruments small enough. He performed the surgery based on the information that he'd also learnt from Rustin about the most successful way to go for it. The surgery happened. The surgery was a complete success. And the next challenge was, okay, where do we get prostheses from?
That's right.
Now, in the early days, they actually got a Spanish guy to make up prostheses using, believe it or not, kitchen cabinet components. Now, like the adjustable kitchen legs and then fiberglass with straps. Now, they worked, but they didn't last very long. So yet again, we consulted with Kay Harris. She put us on to Dwayne Myra. Now, Dwayne makes the prostheses for Molly. And Dwayne is also based in New Orleans. So we then took plaster casts of Faith stumps and we actually travelled over to New Orleans and we met Dwayne, and Dwayne then started to make the prostheses for Faith.
How many weeks was it by the time you actually traveled to New Orleans?
I would imagine it was probably about 3 months, 4 months
Right.
down the line.
You, Rod, a number of other people. Mm-hmm. The amount of time you dedicated to Faith was just beyond expectation, right? In some ways.
Yeah, but you know, when you rescue an animal, rescue is a very easy term, and a lot of people will say, well, I've rescued this and I've rescued that. But if you actually rescue an animal, you do everything it takes to save that animal.
Absolutely.
And this is what we do. Sometimes there are cases when it is impossible, and then you put the animal humanely to sleep. But we firmly believe that if you rescue that animal, you undertake to do everything physically in your power to do the best for it, and you give that animal the best quality of life you can.
So inspiring. Did that end up working?
Faith actually had 5 made because obviously, you know, this is all still all very, very new, and all Dwayne had to work with was Molly. And Molly was a very, very different, had a very different personality to Faith. Molly would rest a lot of the time without her prosthesis on, and she also liked to bend her knee. So the first leg was based on Molly. It didn't work with Faith. So I think it was probably the 3rd design that Dwayne done. Faith preferred to keep the legs straight and walk a different way. And also the other challenge that we had with Faith was a very, very lively little pony, and Faith very rarely laid down. And when she laid down, she wanted to have her leg on. She wouldn't lay down if we took the leg off. She liked to have her leg on 24 hours a day. That gave us another problem. She had to have the leg took off 4 times a day to obviously let the skin breathe, because it's also the same with humans. It can cause irritations, it can cause rubs, you can get pressure sores. It's the same for humans. The first 5 years after an amputation, the leg changes shape, the fluids change shape, the muscles develop differently because obviously they move a different way. It took us 5 legs and lots of different types of socks to also get the right format for Faith. And we actually finished up with a sock that was actually made from the same gel that was actually used for the dolphin. I can't remember the dolphin's name now that had the prosthetic fin made for her.
Winter.
That's right, Winter.
Yeah.
Because Winter also had a similar problem where she couldn't accept the various socks and everything to have her fin on, and they actually developed this gel that worked for her. Dwayne actually got a sock in the same gel, which was very, very high tech, for Faith to try. They tried it on Molly, and Molly had a reaction to it, but it worked for Faith. So, every creature is different. And of course, whether it's a dolphin, it's a pony, whatever, or a human being, different things work differently for each creature. So it was actually the gel that was developed for Winter that worked very well for Faith.
We're talking to Sue Weeding. She's one of the founders with her husband Rod of Easy Horse Care Rescue in Alicante, Spain. 16 years ago, you and Rod could have taken the easy way, right? And I don't mean easy horse care rescue, but but truly the easy way, right? You could have moved to Spain, relaxed, enjoyed really the rest of your life in some relative peace and quiet. Instead, you went the other way. You took, in some ways, the more difficult path. Why do you do this?
Well, a lot of people ask me this, and a lot of people say, "Oh, you are wonderful people." We're not. We are not wonderful people. I think in life, we all have choices. We all have paths. It's one of these things. You open up the box, Pandora's box. What comes out, you have to be prepared for. I put my hands up. Yes, I had no idea that we would end up with 97 horses, ponies, and donkeys. I had no idea the emotional, physical strain, stress that Faith would have created for us. No idea the hard work that all of this would have created for us when I started it. Yes, there are days when I think to myself, my God, why am I doing this? But at the end of the day, it was our choice. Nobody made us do it. We made a decision and we've stuck to it. And really, all I can say is, even on a really, really bad day, I go out there and I see all those guys out there in the fields, and I tell you what, they're worth it. They are absolutely wonderful. To a lot of people, now bearing in mind, me and Rod aren't probably your normal horsey horse type person. We don't care that they can't be ridden. We don't care that they've got psychological problems. We don't believe that if a horse can't be ridden, you should put it to sleep. They didn't ask to be brought into this world, and they're not machines to be bred just to be ridden and then disposed of when they are no longer able to be ridden. We've got horses like Bronson. Bronson, we rescued 5 years ago. Somebody smashed a hammer through his skull to kill this horse. Wow. The horse escaped with the lead rope, the head collar on, and ran along a main road. This was where he was seen by people. The police called us. When we got there, he was staggering. He collapsed into a puddle. He dragged himself up. What had happened was the hammer had smashed the skull, and part of the bone had gone into the brain, and it had basically cut through the nerve that controlled his inner air balance. Now, we managed to get the horse back to the centre. Long story. But that horse actually taught himself to walk again. And people come from all over Spain to see Bronson. We actually get people that come to visit him that have had strokes and brain tumours and suffer from disabilities. I see our animals, our horses that have various problems, and I see children and disabled people interact with them. And it really is a much bigger picture than just rescuing horses, ponies and donkeys. I see the joy they give to people. I see the comfort they give to parents that have disabled children. When we had Faith at the rescue centre, grown men would come with artificial arms, with artificial limbs, and they'd actually show me how their limbs work, and they would tell us how they lost a limb. And it is very, very humbling. Really, I think probably this journey that we've been on, it's really shown and taught me and Rod so much more than just animal rescue. It's made us realise the hardships that people go through as well that are disabled. So it's huge learning curve, very, very humbling. So really, would I do it all again? Yeah, I think I would, just for the hell of it. Yes.
If people physically want to visit you, when do you allow visitors? What are the general rules and guidelines for people visiting?
We live in sunny Spain. Now, I would love more people from anywhere in the world to actually come over, come and have a holiday on the Costa Blanca and come and see us. As a general rule, we are open to the public on the first Sunday of every month. We do horse tours, we do raffle, we have a merchandise, and everybody gets to see all our residents. Anybody that wanted to travel over from another country and come on holiday, our gates would be open. It would be a pleasure.
If folks want to find you, whether it's your website, social media, if people want to make a donation, what are the best ways people can do that?
The easiest way really is to go onto our website, www.easyhorsecare.net.
We didn't really completely finish the story on Faith. What ended up happening with Faith, and what are the big lessons you learned?
Very sadly, Faith died. We put Faith to sleep on the 29th of October 2015. We decided a few years ago that it would be better to Faith to actually live in Barcelona at the Equi Health Clinic, where she had Raquel, who's the nurse there, to care for her 24 hours a day. And obviously she had Gasper there and the other vets that are on site. They could give her a lot more care than obviously we could, because obviously we had so many other horses, ponies and donkeys to care for. It was important that she had the major care that she needed, because as I said, the leg needed to be took off 5 times a day to rest it, to get air to it, to put it on. So she basically was kept in 5-star accommodation. But it transpired that long before we rescued Faith, she'd had laminitis in the other leg, in the good leg. And basically, it was giving her a lot of problems, and she was starting to struggle with the good leg. Gasper called us and he said if there was some way that he could support the bad leg, the prosthesis, rest it, he could actually operate on the good leg, but it wasn't possible. Really, they felt that it was better to put her to sleep before she started to suffer, because she had always been very, very active. She was out and about. She used to go out to see all the other horses. She had the run of the place. She used to go in their office. She was a free spirit. We all felt that that was the time to put her to sleep. Nobody wanted her to suffer, to see her in pain, to see her struggle. So it was agreed that she was put to sleep on the 29th of October. And it also took them 2 weeks for everybody in Barcelona and a huge area to come and visit her to say goodbye. Faith touched so many people's lives, adults, children, and such a huge area of Spain. People travelled to see Faith, to say goodbye for 2 weeks. It hurt all of us very, very deeply. But, that isn't the end. Very soon after Faith was put to sleep, Gasper was contacted by a surgeon in France to help another little pony called Iris that had had a front leg amputation, and he asked Gasper for help. And Gasper obviously gave him all the advice he could. We donated Faith's prostheses to Iris in France. So the story hasn't finished. It's still going on. And there's now another little pony in France called Iris who now has Faith's legs.
Thank you so much. Well, we just want to give you the last word. What would be the last thing you'd like to say in our conversation today?
It's so easy to look the other way and walk on and just say, that's okay, someone else will do it. Don't look the other way. Make a difference and do something.
We want to say thank you to Sue Weeding for sharing her story and for being an amazing inspiration. We also want to say thanks to Nicole Lutz and Corin Helbig for helping make the arrangements to meet Sue. If you want to learn more about Easy Horse Care Rescue Center in Alicante, Spain, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/53. If you'd like to nominate someone to be a guest on Paw Print, you can email us at thisispawprint@gmail.com or go to our contact page, thisispawprint.com/contact. If you want to meet me or Nancy on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, look us up through our profile at thisispawprint, all one word. If you'd like to receive some dog training resources from our favorite positive reinforcement dog trainer, Irit Bloom, simply go to thisispawprint.com/ask to sign up. We want to say thank you to all of you listening out there for sharing Paw Print with your friends and family. And remember that you spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you next time with another great guest on Paw Print.
Paw Print is a production of EVER Education.
You get